Hey, Dave, can you hear me and see me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
How about now?
Yep, got you now.
Hey, Darryl.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Maintaining.
Is it just you or Chris is there as well?
It's just going to be me today.
Okay.
Chris just finished another Olio, so
Yeah.
he's got too much screen time. I think he's going to join in as a participant, but not as a helper.
Okay, Francesca should be there too. Do you see her waiting?
She's not in the room yet. No.
Really?
No.
I just spoke to her. She said she was.
Huh.
Let me text her real quick. So how many folks do we have?
How many do you think, if you had to guess?
Well, Chris had mentioned 50 before. Is that right?
Isn't that amazing? We're up to 72 people.
72. Holy crap. Okay. This is going to be interesting. So I have a general outline of what I'm going to do and have Francesca back me up.
Right.
Just a little 5-point thing, but I would like for you to put, well, you're going to do an introduction for me and Francesca, right? You got her information?
Well, I mean, I have like literally her written out information, so I could do it.
Okay.
You know, it won't be very genuine because I don't know her at all, but I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to read it.
As a resource, I want to offer everyone my ambient noise web address for my website.
Okay.
And also the implicit bias test website. Are you familiar with that test?
Yeah. Steve, can we do that at the end? Because that's usually the time people are like, oh, how can we learn more? Where where should we go next?
Yeah. I'm just giving you a heads up
in
advance that I would do that.
Francesca's here. Should I let her in?
Yeah, definitely. Francesca.
She is here, but I don't see her. Oh, she hasn't started her video yet. Darryl, any tech needs? We're not doing any.
Outside of just fielding people when they raise hands and fielding questions.
Sure.
Outside of that, probably not. I'm actually copying and pasting the 5 parts of what the 5-part framework of what I want to do. Your number is 646-226?
Yeah, that's me.
4888, right?
Yes.
Okay. So after our introduction, I'm gonna, and I just sent it to you, I'm gonna do a little mindful breathing piece just to get folks settled in. And then, wow, the numbers didn't go over. There's 5 parts to what I want to present. One is to talk about what is racism, and then talk about the conditioned heart, mind, and soul, and then how mindfulness can reduce racism. Then do a sample meditation from CNC, and then open it up for Q&A at the end of that. But what I would like to say is that, hey, Francesca, can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. David, meet Francesca. Francesca David from Olio. He's one of the CEOs, I guess, of I think Olio.
Hi.
Person who puts out fires is my formal title. Hi, Francesca. Nice to meet you.
Hi, it's good to meet you too.
So it'll be those 5 pieces. But since there's going to be, we got like 70 people, Francesca, believe it or not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I
So,
posted everything today as best as I could all over the place.
okay. So as we're going through this, David, I'm sure I want to leave room for people to raise their hands and ask questions. So feel free. I mean, you know my flow. We've worked together. So feel free when you feel is a good time to interject and ask a question. Like if Francesca and I are talking about something and someone wants some clarification, you know, like they'll say, well, what does that really mean? Or what's that definition or whatever.
Sure.
I want to field questions on the fly and then definitely save maybe a nice 30-minute chunk at the end for Q&A.
Beautiful. That's great. Yeah, I'll be mindful of that, and we'll just stop at a couple points when there's a lot of questions, and then you know, like if there's 3 or 4 questions, we'll allow that to go, and then we'll try to stay on track. You know, we'll be like, hey, we want to keep it moving. We can't do like 10 questions in a row or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
So I will definitely be mindful of that. Real quick, Francesca, I'm gonna do an intro in the beginning, and I don't know you, so I have like your written bio, but how do you like to be introduced briefly? You know, I'll just say a few words about you and welcome you here.
You would just call me a somatic experiencing practitioner and mindfulness meditation teacher. You could just say that if you want. Francesca Maximé, she, you know, is a,
Great.
you know, sort of whatever in Brooklyn. I don't know. I have to, like, everybody who's like a branding person is like,
I know.
about this. They're just like, they keep coming for me. And so like, I have calls about it this week and I'm just like, listen, I can't with you. Like, I try to help people. They come to me. I do a lot of anti-racism work. I offer the thing that you could offer that would be helpful in terms of who might come here is that I work with my clientele is essentially as a life coach, but the things that I do, it's a life coach practice, but for some people, it's like therapy for them, but it's not always. I have very highly specialized trainings in indigenous focusing oriented therapy, relational life couples therapy, focusing oriented therapy, certified, you know, mindfulness meditation teacher training program, and somatic experiencing practitioner trauma healing, as well as now ongoing, I just finished it an hour ago, brain spotting. And so there's all of these trauma modalities that I'm schooled in, sort of these like subcortical, limbic, you know, neuroscientific ways in which, you know.
I hate to jump in. We're like 2 minutes to start. But what's the most succinct thing that you would like David to say to introduce you?
I would just say this, that I'm a mindfulness meditation teacher and a somatic experiencing trauma healing practitioner. That, you know, I work with people of all populations about trauma, and my focus now is on one-on-one work, but also that I offer clinical work for anti-racism work, in particular for white body people.
Okay.
Amazing. Thank you. And if I miss any of that, I'm sure at the end, people are going to be asking questions and they're going to want to know more.
Fine.
You'll be able to
I'm
jump
not
in.
worried. They can always find me.
Right. All that's on your website, right?
Please, what isn't?
Okay. So I just went over the list with David. I'm just going to go through the flow of it. And you know, as is my practice, as David knows, I open up the space. I always do I open up the space to the Tao to let things fall into place as they will. So we're just going to flow with this and see how it goes.
That's great. And if you ever do want to like break people into smaller groups, that's available also. We don't need to, but we can do breakout rooms at any point if you want people to get into.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I mean by going with the flow, because this is you know, we're breaking ground with this one. And it's also that we're coming in hot because of what's going on right now. You know what I mean? So I would not have dared to structure a, you know, by the numbers thing on an evening like this. You know what I mean? I have to leave space for things to happen, you know? And, you know, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. So we got, what, 25 people in there right now.
Yep. We'll give them another minute or two. Everyone will probably come in at once. Well, also, just while we're here, thank you guys. This is such a cool offering, and we just raised a bunch of money for Black Lives Matter. So thank you guys for offering this.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Darryl's got to get the last minute kinks out.
I needed to close my blinds.
Do you want me on a Zafu, or am I okay where I am?
Oh, you're okay. We're not gonna do like any lying down or anything. We're gonna
Okay. I mean, I have stuff, but I'm just in my more teachy spot.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. You're fine. Where's Nina? Dave?
I don't know where Nina is.
Really? Really?
They live in like a separate little like guest house from us, and so some days we go without seeing each other. Those are rare days, but today is one of them. There's just like a million projects going on. We got all this land, people are gardening, we got baby goats. Getting crazy here. We're getting restless.
For some reason, when I imagine you guys, I see like the three of you guys clustered, connected at the hips and just moving as one unit. You know,
It usually is. This is a weird time for us that we're not all together. Like, even though we are, we're taking some space, becoming our own people.
Mm.
But we'll try to end that soon.
Oh my goodness. So this is this the first or second Sunday of the month? Is this the second Sunday? First Sunday.
I think it's first.
Today's what, the 8th?
7.
Wow. 7.
Today's the 7th. Okay. So then, are we gonna plan to do these like once a month on the first Sunday of the month?
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah. That's a good way to keep the flow. And
Yeah.
Darryl, I think a big thing is like the first time we did your Sunday class, we tried for earlier. I think we did like 4 o'clock or something and didn't get as big of a turnout. So this is kind of good to know that 7 o'clock might be a sweet spot. I know it's not your best flow.
Well, it's more than that though. It's also like this kind of wave always happens after there's a killing. But this one is even much more pronounced. So we got 70 now. I wouldn't expect 70 next month.
Right. Which doesn't mean, I mean, we'd be happy doing this if it was 10 people. So it's important you don't just ride the wave of, the media and keep it going.
Because you definitely have your reactionary factor. That's just like, just react.
Processing and everything. All right. I'm going to let people in 1 minute.
Okay. Man, my barber gave me this GI haircut today. I didn't realize he took so much off. He made me look like a fucking Marine, man. He took off.
It didn't look bad. Anna cut my hair, and it's better than I could have done for myself. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Not bad. I look like myself.
Yeah. This is the first haircut I've had since the quarantining.
So you went into the shop. How did that feel?
Well, it wasn't a shop. My guy lives here in Bed-Stuy, and he cuts out of his home. So I went to his
Awesome.
place. Yeah.
Nice. Things are starting to reopen, right?
Yes. I think what isn't tomorrow supposed to be like a phase 1 soft opening or something?
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna let people in, guys.
Cool.
We're at 50.
Wow. Annie Cornfield. Oh my God. I noticed you right off the bat. For some reason, you popped out at me. Emily Flake is in the house. Oh my goodness. How many people do I know out here?
People turned up for this one, Darryl.
See that. Emily's my old boxing buddy. I used to put on pads and let her beat the crap out of me.
Thai boxing or regular?
Regular boxing. I wasn't going to teach her all my tricks, then she'd really destroy me.
I'm not flexible enough to kick.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's what it was. We kept your feet on the ground.
We had 72 people RSVP for this. There's 55 here right now. So I just want to give it one more minute, see if people are late. But then we'll get started.
Yep. Sherry Ann is waiting. That's another one of my buddies. You see that, Dave?
Yeah, I turned the waiting room off, so they should just be able to get in now.
Can you hear that soft shakuhachi flute music behind me? Right here.
Yep.
Good. Got 3 pages worth. Oh, who else do I know? Jennifer Gaspers. Holy cow. I'm seeing faces I haven't seen in a minute. Okay, I'm sure there's someone else out here right now. Who else is here?
All right, well, as people come in, I think, we have a lot to go through tonight. So let's just get started and see where it takes us. It looks like we've got a reunion of all Darryl's old friends and clients and buddies. And there's a lot of familiar Olio faces here. And I'm sure some of Francesca's people are here. So just to do a quick intro, first of all, thank you, everyone. This is unbelievable that on a Sunday night you're all coming out for this kind of conversation, lecture, and mindfulness meditation session. There's just a million things going on right now, so many different things that could be occupying your time, and you're here with us. So really appreciate it, and we'll continue to put on this programming if this is what people are looking for. So thank you. I hope it's fruitful. I'm David. I'm the co-founder of Think Olio, which was an organization that my friend Chris and I started 5 years ago, where we just wanted to keep learning. And we didn't know if we wanted to go to grad school or whatever, but we knew we wanted to keep having great conversations with teachers. So we just started inviting college professors to teach in our living rooms, in local cafes, in bars, our friends' apartments, and wherever. And we got a few amazing teachers to join in with us in the beginning. started teaching classes without any restrictions on the curriculum, no homework or anything like that, you know, just good like conversation and talking about ideas. And we've built an amazing community around it, which shows having so many people show up tonight. It's incredible. Thank you guys so much. We never intended to be online, but given the circumstances, here we are. And it's opened up a lot of doors. Now we can, you know, just have people join us from anywhere, and that's been a really great benefit to this. We've seen our community expand, and we're so excited tonight. We have Darryl and Francesca leading this session, and I just want to give a quick round of applause and shout out to you guys, because all the proceeds are going to Black Lives Matter for this event, and we got 72 people who RSVP'd. We raised over $1,000 this week. Thank you all so much. I know it's just a time where everyone's like, what can I do? What, you know, how can I be of service? How can I be useful? And this is an amazing win-win-win situation. We get to learn, we get to meet new people, we get to have these conversations, take a moment to reflect, and we're putting our time and our money to good use. So thank you all. This feels great. So Darryl, he's an amazing person in our lives. We found him because he's just an amazing body worker. And a friend of mine had an injury. He went to Darryl. Darryl like fixed him up in 2 sessions. He told his girlfriend about Darryl. She went, same result. Then I learned about Darryl, and now we just, you know, preach the Darryl sermon, and we all go to it. And not only is he a great body worker, but he has a ton of teaching experience. He's done a bunch of Olios. He leads lots of just different mindfulness groups and teaches martial arts, Qigong, all different healing arts. And he's just an amazing person with so much knowledge and so much experience to offer. And I just want to make a note that this was actually the first Olio that Darryl was going to teach with us, was this contact, anti-racism, mindfulness approach. So this is like work Darryl's been doing. This is not just something that we're like, okay, now's a good time, let's do this thing. This is the work that Darryl does in his everyday life. So it's amazing to have this opportunity to bring it to a wider audience. And Darryl is co-facilitating with Francesca Maximé tonight, who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, but we had a few minutes to chat before, and seems like an awesome person. Also doing tons of anti-racist work in her everyday mindfulness meditation classes, and she's a somatic practitioner, life coach, and also has a podcast, right, Francesca? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's called Rerooted, and it's on Ram Dass's Be Here Now network, along with podcasts from my mentor, Jack Kornfield, and some other folks like Tara Brock and Sharon Schellsberg. And just, it's pretty much been around doing systemic injustice, you know, sort of inquiries, and using mindfulness to support that, and different ways in which cultural, you know, groups can sort of undo trauma. So
very cool. All right, so we'll hear more about that hopefully later on, but let's just jump right into it. You're all here, you're ready. There's 60 people here. I'm sure others are out protesting, and that's awesome. We're all showing up in different ways. So I'm going to give the floor over to Francesca and to Darryl, and let's give them a little virtual round of applause. Welcome, and thank you all for being here.
You know, Zoom should have like an applause button that you can hit, and you're, yeah, that'd be the coolest. I see my brother Jonathan Nipping, Dr. Nipping, is in the house. Shout out, John.
Thanks for the shout out.
Look at you. Is that a big beard? What the hell is that on your face?
Or just older.
Is that what it is? Holy cow, look at you.
I'm working on my beard, you know, trying to get it right. Thanks for noticing.
Wow, yeah, well, we're both getting older, man. Jonathan and I go way back. Jonathan is one of my students in a yoga system that I created and teach called Meridian Touch, but that's another story. So really quick, succinctly, just to fill out some of what David was saying, I also have a background in psychology, both an undergrad and graduate degrees in psychology from Penn State. Soon to be starting a PhD next year on social psychology. I also have a master's in leadership psychology. But I have a practice also in Taoist psychology, which has its roots in Chinese medicine. And with my academic background back in 2015, drawing from Western psychology and Eastern psychology and all of my other disciplines, I created a method, a social intervention that I call ambient noise. And ambient noise is a methodology of using mindfulness as a tool to reduce racism. Now, I just want to say here at this juncture that each time something like this happens in the news, a black man gets killed, a black woman gets killed, there's a spike in interest and people rally and come all around. And then the next week after, people disappear, right? And sometimes people are attracted to what I do or the sound of what I do because they think that coming into mindfulness, a mindfulness approach or a spiritual approach might make this easier to do, right? The easiest kind of anti-racism work that you can do is anti-racism work that you keep all in your head, okay? If a person deigns to step into the field of mindfulness, true mindfulness, in order to deal with racism, it is the most difficult, most emotionally upsetting, most disturbing, most painstaking path you could follow. Because undoing racism in society is about undoing racism within yourself. And it requires a lifetime commitment. You basically put your hands on the steering wheel of this car and you cannot let go until the end of the ride. Some people like to check in and check out with anti-racism work. And in my organization, Ambient Noise, we don't deal with people who come in who just wanted to show up and get some information and bounce, or check off a box that said I did this training and bounce. We have no interest in people who want to do that, whether they're white, black, and anything in between. Because, you know, people are saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I know that better than most because I have been in handcuffs with the cops. I have been encircled. I have been profiled. I know the actual fear of that, okay? And I know stories of other black men and women in my life who have lived this horror, okay? And the violence, you know, police violence is just one part of violence when it comes to white supremacy. There's also economic violence. There's also housing violence. There's also educational violence. There's violence across the mainstream. So when we go into mindfulness to do our work, we're looking at unseating, unplugging, and exposing a lifetime of conditioning plus centuries of conditioning that have brought us to this very point, that if we're gonna really do this stuff, we graft this into our lives and make it a part of our being, not just something that we just do occasionally because it's a good cause or it's the right thing to do. Okay? Francesca, did you want to say something? You look like you were.
I was nodding because it really is. I mean, what I think is so interesting is that they call mindfulness a path, and being anti-racist is the same path as mindfulness. They're not actually two different paths. They are the same path because it's about decalcification of stuck thinking and clear seeing and actually being able to be fully embodied. And so when you look at what racism is, the outcome of a false construct, which is race, that perpetuates in a supremacy of systemic and institutional and perpetuated oppression. And then you look at all of the things that mindfulness and somatic work invite you to do to look inside. Then you can actually see where and how the fear response, as mammals as we are, gets programmed, all the imprintings that we have visually, somatically, behaviorally, narratively, and all of that. Mindfulness is the process of bringing your awareness, your loving awareness, your consciousness, your attention, your presence to your experience and finding a way to be with it in a way that enables you to address what Dick Schwartz, the founder of Internal Family Systems, recently said on my latest podcast, is your racist part. so you don't have to worry so much about the fact that like, I'm a good person or I'm racist or I'm not racist. We live in a racist society and have been. We all have intergenerational imprintings also. So committing to this path of actually being able to move into our own truth by looking inside and doing that U-turn is what makes us be able to be non-performative in our activism and in our allyship and co-conspirator work, because then we've already kind of worked through, wow, how did I get these parts and what are they about? And they're not fun for me either. And then we can actually start to be in solidarity in a completely different way. And it's a lifelong commitment because it took lifetimes to get us to where we are now.
So thank you for that. So David, we've got like how many people, 50, 60 out here so far? Okay. Now this, we're going to give you little bits and pieces of what I created years ago, one of the main workshops that we do called Contact and Conversation. And it includes a little bit of mindfulness meditation practice, and it includes some Western psychology. So you're gonna get little dibs and dabs of that. But usually when we have these workshops, we go around the room and we ask people, what race do they identify as? You know, we definitely don't have time for that, and we're not discounting gender and things of that nature, but it's really important when you start this journey of mindfulness to have an idea of where you're starting from, okay? And we're not gonna raise hands or do anything like that right now, but I just wanna just throw that out there for you to wonder, how do you self-identify when it comes to race? You know, just to, you know, take a little time and think about that, because some people have some very unique situations when it comes to race. Some people who come from other countries and come here don't become a certain race until they come here. And when they lived wherever they lived before, they were just a Turk or a Kurd or a this or a that or that. And then when they get here, it's like, oh my God, I'm this race. So, you know, then you have all these different things to juggle with. But it's something to think about and consider when you start this path, because it really makes a difference, especially when you're trying to work on the American version of racism, which is different than racism in other countries, okay? Now, what I do want to do really briefly, and David, you can give me maybe 3 or 4 people to answer this, and I'd like to have the answer on mic, please. And not some of the people that I know, none of my friends, students, and whatnot, but I just want to ask this question. Why are you here in this Olio, and what do you want to get out of it? I just want 3 or 4 people to briefly and succinctly volunteer to tell me why you're here and what you want to get out of this.
Cool. And Darryl, you just reminded me to mention that anytime throughout this session, if you have a question, we're going to field questions at a bunch of different points. So just go down to the participants button and then click the hand raise icon, and I'll be able to see who's raising their hand. And once we get a few hands raised, we'll stop and do Q&A. So yeah, you guys can do that right now. I see one hand up. I'll unmute Cody, and Cody, you can get us started.
Is that my Cody?
It is somebody that you know. But I'm.
Okay.
I would.
Cody and I
reason
have to stay together. Go ahead.
The reason I am here is because racism is something that I research from a health perspective, and it's something that's very important to me. But from a political and social perspective, I feel like I've been very silent on the issue because I've been afraid of repercussions and things throughout my academic career. And now at this point and at this juncture, I feel like I feel safer in taking those gloves off and maybe outing some of my philosophies in a culture, in a situation that doesn't necessarily agree with me. And I have a lot of shame as well for feeling safer in this moment right now. And so one of those things that I think Darryl, one of the reasons I'm coming here is because I want to learn more about how other people feel in that regard. And I want to contact with people who are also maybe hiding from that situation.
Okay. Before we continue, Cody, thanks for that. Just what you said is really striking to me. Cody and I went to Penn State together, and we've had different journeys along this path of dealing with race. And just from what you said, I can tell that you've grown and changed an attitude about some things, because you and I would go back and forth a bit on the CNC page. And he would challenge me and I would challenge him, and he would bring up some academic stuff and I would bring up some academic stuff. But I want to thank you for saying that and for being here and showing up and being transparent about the shame, man. I mean, I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing about that, Cody and Darryl, is that, you know, one of the mindfulness pieces that can help scaffold us with shame is that in mindfulness, nothing is permanent, personal, or perfect. So if we have a little bit of distance around the idea of it being personal, meaning that like this is an experience that we can have, that it's not just about me as a small-bodied person that feels like I'm holding all of the weight, it can create a little bit of space for us to then kind of lean into unpacking some of what that is about. And then the whole mindfulness practice is exploring where the narrative comes from that is keeping us stuck from being able to then go into connection. So
Thank you. David, give me just two more, because I definitely want to get into the meat of what we're doing here.
Great. Yeah. Lauren has her hand up. So Lauren, you can go ahead.
Hi, Darryl. My name's Lauren. I'm a fellow Asian bodywork therapist, and I learned about you through Matthew.
Okay.
Be here. What compelled me to this talk in particular is that for 25 years, I worked with vulnerable populations, but I was very aware that because of the power differential that was there weren't a lot of people I could talk to about my understanding, misunderstandings, or just explore my thought process. And what appealed to me about this, because I've seen some classes that say, hey, white woman, come talk to us. And I feel like I'm put on trial before I even go. And I feel a little intimidated by that. But you are using principles as a practitioner that I understand, but I also felt really invited to be vulnerable and say, I'm really naive about my own prejudices. I don't have anybody I can talk to that I respect that allows me to say, I don't understand, like the things that I don't understand or can't or want to test out. So this was the first time, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm a little nervous to be here, but to be able to talk with people who are mindful and thoughtful and use a language that I can feel invited to engage and understand what do I not know. So thank you so much for designing this. I'm thrilled to have found out about it.
Okay, you're very, very welcome. And that, thank you for that, because part of the design of ambient noise, contact, and conversation was to make an entry for people to come in and not feel intimidated coming in through the door. Thinking from yin yang perspective, I want to create an energy of yin, of receptiveness, of openness, to bring people into the work and then start to do the hard, painful stuff in the middle, the yang stuff, and then have a release and resolution at the end so that the work flows like a wave. Lauren, I want you to reach out to me later. Oh, and if there are any other practitioners out there, acupuncturists, massage therapists, healers, wellness people of any sort, I want you to contact David. So David can contact me, because I want to send you a video that was done by these practitioners in Canada talking about white privilege and how it affects wellness in the realm of wellness, like specifically for wellness practitioners. So if you are in the wellness field at all, reach out to David. David will reach out to me and we'll get you that video.
I actually sent you a Facebook message with Matthew, because I shared your video and I invited you to comment on it. I was letting people know I was attending. So anyway, but I will, I'll follow up. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. And where is Matt today?
Can't account for him.
Yeah, I will account for that. I'll find Matt.
We'll get him to come next time.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to make a quick side, just a side. This is not a judgment. This is just an observation. In my experience, when I do this work, and some of you already know what I'm going to say from what I was just saying to Lauren, 9 times out of 10, there are so few white men that show up for this work. It is always like 90, 95%. When it's women, I mean, between the genders of male, female with white people, it's mostly the women that show up. That's a powerful statement. We won't go into that, but it's a powerful statement. So when white men show up, or men who identify as white, I really, really appreciate when they show up. Okay, just give me one more, David, so we can move on.
Great. Last one for now is Pavan. Go ahead, Pavan.
Hi, I'm Pavan. I'm from India, so I'm one of those people, like you mentioned earlier, that like I'm, you know, back home I was just used to like, yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, I fit into the culture in a certain way, and like now I've just been learning like what does race mean like for me, or like how do I or what does it mean for me also to support like not just like in the like racism like in the Indian community, but like the Black community and like beyond. And like so recently I've been learning a lot about things like the model minority myth and trying to understand the structural history of the institutions, like because one of the reasons I'm here though is also because I'm interested in seeing how you incorporate somatic practice into like doing this kind of work, because I've been meditating. I have a yoga practice and I've been studying Vedanta for about like 8 to 10 years. And like, I know like for myself, yeah, that's true that like going within yourself does lead to answers about the outside world, and it brings you in harmony with like being able to listen to your surroundings better and being able to respond better. But I guess one thing I haven't really been that great at is like how do I even begin to communicate that? So like I'm interested in seeing like how you're doing that work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. And so, like I said, you're going to get just a smattering of the contact and conversation work, because that is designed for a much longer piece. We're basically here to talk about the rudiments of mindfulness and psychology and using it to reduce racism in folks. So you'll get a bit of that here today. So moving forward, a lot of folks have a different definition of racism, or what they think racism is, or what a racist person is. I'm going to cut to the chase and use a definition that's going to be our working definition for going forward for this evening of what racism is. And I hope you can get on board with it, and you have any questions. We'll tuss it out just a little bit if we have any questions about it. But I just want to put this out there to see if you can latch on to this. It's quite simple, but it's also quite effective in framing our conversation. Okay. How many of you have any kind of biases or prejudices around people at all? Raise your hand. Any kind of biases or prejudices? Raise your hand. Okay, some of you do not have biases or prejudices. Well, Cheryl, I see you cracking a little smile there. It took you a little while to get that hand up. Right? That hand was a little heavy. It was kind of the arthritis. You're thinking, stuff was in your head, right? Yeah, you're processing like, I can't be biased or prejudiced. Okay, so I'm only looking at page 1. There's 3 other pages. I'm assuming the other people have raised their hands too. All of us have biases and prejudices, okay? All of us prejudge people all the time. It's a part of our nature. It's a part of survival. It's a part of what are called schemas in the cognitive schemas of the brain that are programs to help you to negotiate your relationships with people and places and situations. Okay. That said, there's an institution called the People's Institution for Survival and Beyond, based in New Orleans, and they do these wonderful workshops. Some of you may have heard of them. They're called the Undoing Racism workshops. Very, very powerful 3-day workshops. And they had coined or put together a definition for racism many years ago that goes as follows. Race prejudice, not just prejudice about the kind of car or food or house or whatever, race prejudice plus power. And that's the key term, folks. Race prejudice plus power to do something about race is the definition of racism. Raise your hands if you understand or you think you understand what I'm saying. Race prejudice plus the power to act on race or control resources or outcomes or situations is racism. Okay. And hands down. Michelle Schultz, what did you not vibe with that definition?
Oh no, I absolutely did.
Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand.
Hand raised and then down. And then
Oh, hand raised and down. How do you pronounce it? Pavan? Pavan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did your hand go up? I didn't see your hand go up.
Oh yeah, I just did this.
Okay, all right. So okay, cool. So then I'm assuming then that the majority of the other folks also raise their hands too. So that's cool. So that said, I could be prejudiced against Cody or Jonathan or David and not like them for whatever reason because they look white. I can make all kinds of assumptions. But because as a Black person, my people don't control the means of resources and institutions, and I don't have the power to marshal effect to control David or Cody or Jonathan. I can be prejudiced against them. I can be bigoted against them, but I cannot be racist against them. Do you get that difference? Let me see your hands if you get that difference. It's the power differential. Hoa? Or are you kind of iffy? Kind of iffy? Let me hear you. Turn on your mic.
I mean, it's like I get that power, but that power part, but it's like even people who doesn't, I feel like you can still be racist if you don't have any power to act on it, or the influence of your action is minimal.
If I wanted to stop David or Jonathan or Cody from living in a certain neighborhood or attending a certain school or bringing law enforcement to bear upon them, I can't do that unless I have power.
Yes,
Right.
but yeah, I'm just thinking about just how obviously the people have power, but the people who's just average people who are still racist, but they don't the influence of their action is minimal. Do we just not count it as well?
No, it's not that you don't count it. It's a semantic thing, but it's an important thing to differentiate, especially when you start to have conversations with people, because then the conversation gets really messy all over the place.
Mhm.
Because, you know, I could say that David is racist and he can call me racist, and then we could be like, you know, reverse racism and this, that, and the other, but it doesn't point to the power piece, because the power piece is the 1619 slaves from Africa here building up to now piece. That's why it's really important to make that differential. And this is going to help all of you in your conversations when you talk to people to make that differential.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
So with racism, we understand that this is a psychosocial, enculturated learning process that gets ingrained in our brains. It gets into our DNA, it gets into our bones, it gets into our nervous system. And we literally pass this down almost like genes. Before the word meme became an internet thing, meme was like a mind virus that you can pass from person to person. And it replicates and it changes depending on the situations, right? This type of conditioning, you know, when I was studying at Penn State, it was interesting when I took my social psych classes and some of my other psych classes, where they would talk about social learning theory and cognitive dissonance and all these other things. And I realized while learning this stuff that it didn't really take much from the academic piece to just step aside a little bit and shine a light on the power piece that linked these things together and how and look at how they affect relationships in society. Said another way, how many of you are familiar with a Skinner box is, the Skinner box experimentations? You guys know what a Skinner box is? Okay, cool. Skinner box, when I explain it, you will say, oh yeah, I know that. Basically, it's the white box with the rat or the mouse in the box and the lab guy out with the coat, putting water in or taking water out or feeding the animal or shocking or punishing the animal. You know, this, that, and the other thing. A controlled space environment with someone who has power and authority and resources outside of it, calling the shots with inside to condition the behavior and the outcomes that these animals had in a situation. America is basically like that from a white supremacist point of view, because the Africans who were brought here to be in a Skinner box to serve white society. And the white people had the power for the inputs, the outputs, the punishments, and the rewards to make us Africans do what they wanted us to do. Okay? Those actions and that mindset hurts everyone, the perpetrator and those being abused. Okay, it coalesces in something, and it's beyond this talk, called internal IRO, internal racialized oppression. Okay, where white people have internalized the idea that they are superior, and people of color and Black people have internalized in general the idea that they are inferior. So we're all working with sick shit in our heads in regards to relationships with each other, because these are relationships that are bound up in control and power and dehumanizing each other. Okay, am I clear so far? Okay, so thanks, John. So where mindfulness comes in, and this is particularly salient now, that programming, which I figuratively call ambient noise, because it runs in your mind like an app that's running in the back of your phone that you don't know is on, but it's running and it's taking up power and it's doing shit. Mindfulness shines a light on that app that is running so that you can pull it up and plug into what this app is putting out, okay? And so for our basic purposes of mindfulness, we look at 4 basic attributes of it. You guys know what open monitoring is? I'm assuming most of you have some kind of association with mindfulness. You guys know what heard of the term open monitoring? Okay, no problem. 4 pieces of the mindfulness paradigm. Cognitions, your thoughts. Emotions, your feelings. Physiological responses, the things that your body may do. Quickened pulse, sweating, rumblings in the stomach. And behavioral impulses, the impulse to move the body, to change your place in space, okay? When you use open monitoring just means being aware of any of those 4 as they happen in the present moment, okay? So, who was it that said, Lauren, I think it was you, you had said, you had this knowledge and experience, but you just didn't know what to do, right? How did you say it before, Lauren?
I was saying I work with vulnerable, for 25 years I worked in human services with vulnerable populations, but I was in a position that I couldn't talk with people about my own, just to go through my thought process and try to understand things.
Thank you. Thank you. So with Lauren, if Lauren was using a mindfulness meditation technique or practice, when she was engaging her clientele, her population, and thoughts came up, if she's using mindfulness, she understands that her thought is not her. She's actually able to stand apart from the thought and just know that the thought is an entity, an energy occurrence of its own. It's not really her. When your thoughts have you and you become egocentric with a thought, you can't see the separation. But with mindfulness, you stand apart and you watch things arise. So Lauren could have watched a thought of nervousness come up, or a thought of fear, or disgust, or anger. And then by having that little bit of space, then could have questioned herself, could have questioned the environment, could have questioned, examined or researched anything around that to validate whether or not that cognition, that thought, had any validity to it. Now, it sounds cumbersome, but when you have a mindfulness practice, this becomes lightning fast in time. This is why this is a lifelong process to get this stuff out, because as soon as you start down this road, everything's going to be clunky. It's going to be like, wow, this person walked past me of this race or whatever, and I felt this, but now they're gone in the moments. You might not even realize it until you get back home. Like, wow, I really got nervous when that person came, or I really felt this or that. But the idea is that you put yourself out there you decided that you're going to do this practice. Just like you're going to practice tennis or swimming or sewing or cooking or whatever, you've dedicated yourself to this practice. And you know that when you have these interactions, you're going to start to take note, that you're going to watch for these thoughts, these feelings. You're going to notice when your palms get sweaty, when your pulse starts to quicken. You're going to notice when your body starts to tighten, or when you want to leave the room, or when you want to do something with your body. Right? Are you guys following me so far? Does that make sense? Okay. With that, let me just tell you this briefly. And I'll tell you this, I don't know, Cody, I may have told you this, Cody. This was my personal test in using my hypothesis in real time with Muslim people. Okay. I'm from Chicago originally. I was born in 1963. So I went through the 60s, early 70s. I went through the Black Panthers, the hippies, the Chicago riots, all that stuff. Mind you, I was a child, but all of that stuff was around me and it was in the news, and it really had an impact on me. So growing up as a child, just speaking of Muslim, just the word Muslim in general, I developed a very, very deep-seated fear of Muslim people based on what I saw in the news and based on what I heard in my environment. Now, mind you, guys, okay, and I want you to take this ride with me and just be in my shoes and just like come along with this. Mind you, when I put those formations together, Muslim became just a big catch bin for anyone who was Black and wore maybe a kufi or something. If they were Indian, if they were dark skinned, they could have been Sikhs, they could have been Turks, they could have been anything. But in my mind, I lumped them into this one big bag called Muslim and Muslim bad, okay? In 1981, I moved to New York from Chicago, and well, actually Evanston. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois. So that's a suburb. When I came to New York, I was exposed to the Black Israelites. I was exposed to the 5 percenters. I was exposed to all these different religious factions. And you know what my little mind did? I put them all into the same folder, the same pile. It's like Muslim, bad, stay away, bad vibrations, bad people, da, 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 da. That's it, okay? I kept that through my 20s, through my 30s, through my 40s, and when 9/11 hit, oh God, right? That just solidified more of my fear that I've always had with me, which was an irrational fear that I had never ever challenged. So for instance, when I ride the trains and I see the guys selling bean pies or selling incense or selling body oils, whenever I saw those guys on the train, you know what I would probably do? If something had jumped off on the train and I got nervous, I would probably pull an Amy Cooper on someone who looked Muslim and blame them because I was so sure that these people were bad, that they must be up to something. I would call the cops and I would rat them out because I was that afraid of these people. And mind you guys, Muslims had never ever done anything to me in my entire life, but this was my programming. This was my schema. This was the ambient noise in my head that I just let play. I never challenged it, okay? After 9/11 and getting all the news about how bad Muslims are, more program, more confirmation, right? Confirmation bias. I started to date a woman from Morocco, go figure, right? A Muslim woman. How the hell did that happen, right? So now I've got a lover who's a Muslim. And then I'm also a martial artist, so I started to teach this guy Muay Thai, and he was a Muslim. So here comes cognitive dissonance. Here comes feelings that are incongruent. Cody, how do I have a woman who's a lover and a good friend who's a student who I think are bad people because they're Muslims, but I'm interacting with them? Here comes repression, guys. Here comes the pushing it down. Here comes the making excuses. Here comes the ignoring of it. It's like, think about the racial people, the people who are outside of your race in your life that you probably have certain feelings about, and you push all that shit down, right? So in my undergrad at Penn State, I was given an assignment to do a ethnographic essay, write about a subculture that you know nothing about, right? You know what I decided to do? I decided to challenge my fear because I knew I was living a lie. I was living incongruently. It's like I've got a lover and a friend and they're Muslim, but they're dangerous, but I trust them, but they're dangerous because they're bad and they're good. So instead of living like this, you know, I said, okay, for a full semester, I went to a masjid, a mosque, every Friday for their Jummah prayer. I sat with the Muslims. I talked to them. I interviewed them. I spent time with them. And I took all of this angst, all of these thoughts and these feelings into the mosque. Mindfully, because I had a long mindfulness practice for martial arts, and I was able to bring each one of those up into the light, and today, they're all completely gone. All of them. I have not one shred of fear or negativity with Muslims. Now, this is my case, and it's a small case, and it's, you know, it's not such a big thing like compared to what we're talking about with white supremacy, but it is an example in real time of how if you challenge those thoughts, emotions, feelings, the physiological things that come up and those impulses, that you can start to change them, because that's the only way you can really, really change them. You can't change with laws and policy. You can't legislate racism away. Okay, are you guys with me? Does that make sense? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Darryl. So you bring up a really important issue, and that is, we can all be not racist, and I can have a couple Black friends, and that makes me not a racist. Is the common belief or thought in a lot of people's minds. But I think there's something that I wanted to ask you about. At what point did you come to accept that you had these heuristics and these deep-rooted beliefs? And was that acceptance and the piece of acceptance as important in your journey to freedom from that heuristic?
Excellent question. Yeah, because at some point you've got to really say, I really feel this way. It's like, yeah, he's my Black friend, but every time he comes over my house, I watch him. Or he's my Asian teacher, or he's my Indian whatever. You've got to really come to that fork in the road and say, wow, I really think or feel this way about this person. So Cody, for me, it was a combination of my girlfriend and my student, because my girlfriend then started to live with me, and then there was a thing about pork, and then there was Ramadan, and there was all this stuff coming up, and my head, it just became uncomfortable, Cody. You know what I mean? It just became like a weight. But I'll say it like this, for white folks, you have it so much worse or so much harder, because everything in this society is geared to affirm your rightness for being scared, bigoted, judgmental, arrogant, whatever. There's just everything, so you, as white people who identify as white, you got a lot of work cut out for you in that respect.
Darryl, if I may, I'd like to just offer again something here to just sort of ground us in the mindfulness teaching of that there's nothing wrong with you. That the core of you is you have the heart of the Buddha. You are already all of that, right? So it's to ground yourself in this idea that, why do I have a hard time believing that? Why do I have a hard time coming into this place of I'm actually okay? Because all this other stuff is there to try and protect the me that I don't already believe is just fine. I'm here. I can flow like water. I'm good. I can do these different things. I can be used for different purposes, but that really there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. And a teacher named Sherry Huber, who wrote a book called There's Nothing Wrong with You, A Guide to Getting Over Self-Hate, basically talks about what she says, egocentric karmic conditioning. And that is the imprinting, that is the conditioning that then creates the beliefs, the habit patterns. But it all comes out of this piece of what we're believing is safety. So this idea of also just opening, perhaps your prayer can be, perhaps your intention can be, just opening one molecule in the morning or at night before you go to bed. What would life be like? What would it be different in my world if I actually started to take in for a moment that there's nothing wrong with me? That I'm okay, and that from that place, then we can move into a place of, I can actually take stock and be accountable for what are these habit patterns and imprinting and conditioning that I've learned over time. So you're never managing from some other place how to do things, You're not trying to manage it. You become it because you've given yourself the kind of compassion and the self, and you recognize there's nothing imperfect about how you are or who you are. It has evolved because you're as much of a victim to this system of oppression as anyone. And yet you carry immense power and privilege that is denied to other people. And from that place, we can then lean in and start doing the work.
Excellent point about the non-judgment piece. That piece, and I'm glad you said that, Francesca, because for me, that was easier for me to do than, let's just say, the average white person who's just like so sure that white is right. You know what I mean? So I was able to, like, you know, Muslim, Black, okay, we're kind of in the same boat, basically. There wasn't the hierarchical piece of, you know, I'm top of the food chain, so it's like, well, I can't. It's just like the you know, when you ask sometimes about prejudice and bias, not even racism, like when we just started, like, do you have any prejudice or biases? Sometimes it's very hard for white people to admit that they do have those. But having that self-compassion and understanding that there's nothing wrong, and like I said with mindfulness, these things stand apart from you, that understand that they are not you. That space is spirit. Between that ego idea and your real idea, that's the spirit that heals. That's where you're able to jettison that other part and let it go, and then bring in good things in its place. You know, but when the ego construct grabs onto it, and then because it looks around and sees other ego constructs doing the same thing, it just solidifies it. Because then, like a feedback loop, you're getting this message that you're doing the right thing. You belong in the group. It strengthens the group. It keeps the group safe. It keeps the resources safe. It keeps the power in place. This must be good. So we've got layers of things, but your point, Francesca, is really, really helpful about that compassion piece. Okay? Are we all good so far? Are we on the same page? Any other questions? Okay.
I just want to add one tiny piece. Sorry, Jonathan. Just that it's not to say that you can fall into arrogance and narcissism, because we already know that that's not appropriate. It's to say that it's humility. That's all. And it's just that piece of just being not defended, right? So I don't want to say like, let yourself off the hook for everything. No, we're going to lean in and we're going to dig. But that can be the scaffolding that can help us do the leaning in.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, what you just said, Francesca, really helped me, because I was kind of going back and forth. I'm like, but I know that I have things that I need to fix or improve. And so how does that jive with this idea of I'm already okay? But that was very helpful. And Darryl, your story just, this is more of like personal curiosity, I guess. I'm thinking of really prominent figures in the Black community: Muhammad Ali, Kareem, Malcolm X. Like, did you put them in that same basket too, or what was going on with that?
Good question. No one's ever asked me that question. Jonathan, in a certain sense, I did. Names like Kareem, and like I would have a visceral reaction to Muslim type names. And this is so fascinating because, again, I have to reiterate, I've never had any conflict with any Muslim. I've never had a fight. I've never been harassed. I've never had any conflict. This was all social training, pure social training. So yeah, like when he changed his name to Muhammad Ali, I was like, ugh. Like Cassius Clay worked for me. You know, Kareem, when he went from Lou Alcindor to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I'm like, oh, you know, like it wasn't even something that I said, John, it was something I just felt. Like, this is where mindfulness really, really helps, because these things can be so goddamn subtle. Like really, really subtle. It can just be like a, or like, you know, but it's in that matrix, you know? So that's the answer to that.
And if I could just add there, the reason why it's so subtle is because you have a fight, flight, freeze trigger response subcortically, synaptically, your evolutionary negativity bias that was created to keep you safe. Somewhere along the way, literally when they say your wires got crossed, they did get crossed in the sense that they fused in a certain way that you have a belief associated with something that could potentially cause you harm, and therefore you want to avoid it, or you're disgusted by it, or use something. Oftentimes, this is how our limbic system is just sort of patterned. The thing is, this is natural for animals, but animals don't make up narratives and have beliefs and then do things like murder people over it. You know what I'm saying? It's a different way. So understanding part of the basic physiology behind why do we have the response that we have of disgust, I don't like that, or, you know, just the name makes me shirk, right? Like that's a physiological response. And when you practice in deep meditation over time around those things and you contemplate what those are and you check, okay, this is real, but is this true? Meaning that I'm having this physiological response, but then you kind of go in and you start to unpack it. Is it true that all Muslims are dangerous or bad? What in my direct experience is the evidence of that? And then you can go back and you can look at what that somatic reaction is, because you can't deny it. Some people, like, they're like, you know, they'll look at someone that they might want to date or something like that, and someone they know immediately they're drawn to, and other people that they're immediately sort of repulsed by. And, you know, those also can be very physiological responses. So I just want to add that piece in too, because a lot of it has to do with our neurobiology, but then not being able to do the mindfulness training of being with it and use Homo sapiens sapiens, the ones who are aware that we are aware. So you're using your executive functioning and your prefrontal cortex to help calm and soothe the limbic system. That's the one that gets fired up and then ends up shutting down or pushing away, or, you know, blanking out a whole group of people or whatever it is. You're able to have a relationship with that part. This part starts talking to this part. It's not just that this part that pushes away or categorizes the whole thing is always in the control seat.
And I just want to add to that just briefly. And Laura, you had a question, right? I'm sorry. Didn't you? Laura, turn on your mic.
Thank you.
One second before you.
Sure.
To add to what Francesca said, I don't want anyone to misunderstand this whole mindfulness piece. This is still not stuff you just work out in your brain. You got to do some damn work with this. You have to physically, because that's a part of the reprogramming. It's not just reprogramming from sitting and meditating. You have to viscerally go through the motions. I'm not saying you got to be in the front of a protest line. I'm not saying you got to, like, you know, do any kind of like thing dramatically, but your soma, your body has to be involved with the programming, with the reprogramming that you're trying to do, meaning you must take actions in order to finish completing these circuits, okay, so that they stick. Lori.
Yeah. Oh, where am I? Okay, am I here? Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I came in later than I expected. I really love what you're sharing about mindfulness and the body and being able to observe and stop and witness. I know for myself that there's a lot of shame and humiliation and fear, and there's something about the interpersonal space between me and what we're dealing with now as the bridging the place of the fear and the tension and all the imprints that are coming, say, between me and my Black sisters, and whatever arrogance I have saying that I have Black sister friends, but what am I unpacking here? And there's something for me. I was on a call with Amanda Kemp for a few days, and I just kept saying to everyone, there were 60 of us, I need to make a mistake and to go through shame and humiliation, because I don't think I'm going to get out of this just with mindfulness. There's some part of me that wants to be able to be in a community where I could be on a call like this and go, I'm going to make a fucking mistake. I am not perfect. I can't be in this patriarchal world that's asked me to be perfect and destroyed my freedom to have my emotions. So I just want to speak to the beauty of mindfulness, but also, Darryl, what you said about when I go to situations that are uncomfortable, if I breathe through it And I just keep watching my emotions and I watch my sensations and I keep going to spirit and go, wait a minute, what's my vision here? What's my purpose? What's my heart yearning for? I want to break through. I want spirit to connect you and me. Like that's my heart's desire. That's my longing. If I hold on to that, I can make it through. But when I let go of the vision of that, and I can do it on a pillow, it's very different when you and I are across from each other and I get triggered by you or something and I go into activation, I go, shit, don't talk now. Like the beautiful thing that she did on the call, she kept saying, let's ground. Because I think we don't stop to ground and then the reaction gets strong and then we talk and then I might regret what I'm saying and say, wow, now I got to look at my impulse to say something because I didn't stay mindful. So I just wanted to say thank you both for this call. I think it's amazing. I think we really just need, like Darryl, you're so natural, you know, the two of you together. It's like we don't need a $250 therapy session. Like get over it. We fucking need to sit in a group and have these conversations we've never been able to have and let our fears come out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that very much. And you just reminded me of something else to reiterate. The fact that in the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, they use this term, the growing edge. When you are doing this work, ladies and gentlemen, you must, I will say it one more time, you must head toward the growing edge of discomfort in your work, or you are not doing the work. You must risk vulnerability, making mistakes, and being fucking uncomfortable. There is no easy path to this work. It doesn't mean that you throw yourself to the lions. It doesn't mean that you allow yourself to be abused. You go to the growing edge where you are uncomfortable. And then when you need to pull back, ground yourself, rest, take a day off, come back at it again tomorrow.
Can I ask though, as a white man, it's really tough for me to get uncomfortable because I have that power dynamic.
I was just going to speak to that, Cody.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was actually just, if you don't mind, and then if you can just hold that thought, if I don't speak to it, then please continue. I love what you were saying, Lori, about what's my vision, because one of the core mindfulness teachings also is setting your intention. And so my intention is to be anti-racist. My intention is to embody living day to day, breath to breath, an anti-racist life, one of clarity and one of recognition of what's actually here, which means that we can turn with a friendly attention to the actual experience that we're having, which means that we're not already judging it and pushing away the fact that we may have a racist part that's emerging that is making us feel a particular kind of way about the kind of person we should be versus the kind of person we actually are versus what we are or are not able to do. And for that practice of RAIN, recognize, meaning just notice, wow, I'm having that issue. Allow, meaning just be with it. Let it sink into your body and check in. What is this like in me? A tightness in my throat, a heaviness in my belly? Is there something kind of butterfly here? Do I feel like I'm getting energized in my hands? Is there electricity? Start to notice the body sensations because they precede everything else. They're the sort of, signal light. Then you investigate, then you start to go in and unpack it. And then you offer yourself like, I'm a human and I'm starting to look at these things. And that's part of what I need to be looking at. And as you do that, you practice distress tolerance. We live in a comfort culture where people feel as though they're entitled to being able to not have to experience distress somatically. And so our window of tolerance often feels like when we get into a place where we feel as though we are somehow not dominating, because patriarchy, and that's what white supremacy is a dominant model. If we're not at the top or ahead of someone else, which means that someone else is below us and we have to always be in a process of competing to get to the next rung, because there's always the next rung. And then if I define my self-worth as part of the person who needs to be on the next rung up, then I won't be able to tolerate the distress of what it's like if I'm not getting up to the next rung of whatever it is. And that's going to feel uncomfortable. And so the ability to be, as Darryl is saying, uncomfortable with our situation and know that we can just get comfortable with that, but recognize it as sensation. A lot of people have panic attacks. A lot of people have a lot of fears when they come to see me for coaching sessions. And even I was hosting, I have a new initiative called AREA, the Anti-Racism Responsibility, Embodiment, Accountability, and Action Initiative. We meet on Wednesdays for white-bodied people, and you're welcome to join me. But in that, somebody said, it's so unbearable. It's so unbearable. And I'm like, notice that it feels unbearable. And you're in your living room in Long Island. Take a look around. Just notice where you are in space and time. Have a breath. Just check in and notice if there's something there that could create a little bit of space to let your nervous system know that I'm actually okay right now. I'm still safe. I'm actually in a place where I'm noticing I'm having this thought. I'm noticing I'm having this somatic reaction of shutdown and heaviness. And then maybe it could also be aggression, like I need to come on top again or whatever it is. And that I can be with that from that place and how that's the portal to change.
Okay. Cody, was that speaking to what you were going to say, or there's a part of it?
There's a lot to it. There's a lot that was very helpful in that. There is this other question about, you know, when I have the power dynamic in most circumstances. Sometimes I don't. I'm a student in certain situations. And I find that, you know, my life experiences have made me feel not very uncomfortable when other people would feel danger or something. I can go to a dangerous circumstance and not feel very uncomfortable. So it's hard for me to use uncomfortability as a signal for me to recognize where I'm at. In most cases, at least as a psychophysiologist, I do a lot of work with especially distress tolerance and maybe radical acceptance. But I find that if I were to practice some of those behaviors, like let me now act like I'm not going to be racist. Let me list these behaviors. These are the behaviors I would do if I were not racist. For me, that's a challenge. It's something that I have done and engaged in, but it's a challenge because those behaviors need to be identified through some somatic experience that I find the biggest struggle in attaining that uncomfortability in experience. Mostly in thoughts I can get there, but in experience, it's hard for me to know when I'm the bad guy and the aggressor in circumstances because I hold that power dynamic. And I wonder what your thoughts are on
May I
how
offer,
I can do that.
as a
Yes.
multi-ethnic woman, a thought on that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Cody, tell Francesca your background, your ethnic background, please.
Oh yes. So I'm Hispanic, and recently found out that I'm actually not Italian at all. I'm Hispanic and Native through a DNA test that came about. So I haven't learned much about my hidden heritage, but I'm completely white, and so I have never experienced a single moment of what I would consider racial discrimination, although my family has and people in my family have. So I have that connection to it, but I do identify as white.
Yeah, and Francesca, could you please share with him your background?
Yes, I'm Haitian, Dominican, Italian, and American. And I think what's very interesting about what you're saying, Cody, is that you not only are, you know, sort of multi-ethnic yourself, but that not only do you present as white, but that you identify as white. And I think that that in and of itself can be unpacked. But one of the ways in which, and I don't know if this is okay to play with you, you tell me if this feels right or not, meaning
Always,
that it's not going to feel right, but that's what I'm trying to point out.
It's okay.
is what might it be like for you to know that in this forum with the 70 or 80 people that you have on here, that's predominantly women, that a lot of different folks with different backgrounds, different cultures or whatever, what might it be like for you? Because I know you're earnest, I know you're eager, I know you're here, you want to lean in, to actually take a step back and check and see what it would be like to decenter yourself and allow other people to potentially come forward with some of their questions and some of their experiences and see whether or not they might actually have some of the questions that you might also have, but to not necessarily feel like you have to be the one to sort of come in and fill the space with that kind of a question. So it's the receptivity to the other folks' experience on the call. And I'm not saying that other people aren't benefiting from what you're saying, because they are. But part of that mindful decentering work, part of that bringing that mindful awareness in, is noticing the discomfort of what it's like to sit on my hands when I want to say something and I'm in earnest. And they said, well, it's open for calls, it's open for questions. I have just as much of a right as anyone else does. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm here in this anti-racism workshop, for God's sakes, I'm right. But that to notice that it's the privilege here, or the advantage of having been the recipient of whatever that, you know, white identity is, that makes it so easy. And so, as Darryl was saying, so subtle, so easy to just go in there and just sort of literally take up the space. And
so let me just do this, Francesca.
No, I get it.
Put a cap on that, Cody. Check this out. Do you guys remember what my first direction was when I asked the question? I said, I don't want to hear from people I know and my students and friends. And who was the first one to ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, right. So
and not stopping at that, right? Like continuing to be the one to continue to ask questions throughout the call, which is, again, noticing the distress tolerance. Are there feelings of shame, or gee, I did something wrong coming up? What does that feel like in my body? Do I even want to go to another anti-racism workshop now if I'm going to get beaten up? Notice what's happening.
Well, now that you mention it, I do have some shame in it, and it is a very, I think, eye-opening way to bring about that uncomfortability, specifically that I was asking for.
Is there any
and
body sensation with the shame right now, though? Do you detect it?
I do feel a little bit flush in the chest. Okay. I do feel a bit flush.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So just noticing that. And then again, I'm enough and I matter. I'm noble and dignified. There's nothing wrong with me. And I'm having a sensation of flush in the chest. And I'm at my growing edge. And I'm practicing, because I'm on this path of being anti-racist. And we're all here.
Not just saying, and is this really real? And like, what is actually happening in this space, you know?
Thank you for being willing to engage in this play. It's I think, you know, I appreciate your willingness to kind of go there about that with this. So thank you.
As you mentioned, it's very subtle, and I do appreciate it, because that is what I need. And I thank you.
Thank both of you, really. So I'm really, really glad this came out this way. I had planned on doing a mindfulness meditation for, I had something else in my pocket. This is why I say David and Francesca, we're just gonna flow with this and let the Tao do what the Tao does. There couldn't have been a better example, ladies and gentlemen, of mindfulness than what just transpired here. And this is a part of the methodology that we use in ambient noise and our contact and conversation workshops. We do these workshops online. We do them for groups, for institutions, for organizations. After COVID is done, we will be doing them in person again. But I'm gonna put in the chat the website for ambient noise if you guys want to reach us to have any kind of workshops done. If you get a group of people together, you can have a workshop. Also, a really fun test, fun as in interesting, is to do the implicit bias test. by Harvard University. If you've never done this test before, if you've never done any kind of bias or prejudice test, I'm gonna put that in the chat as well. Or you know what, better yet, Dave, can we just email them the ambient noise website and the implicit bias website as well? We can do that, right, Dave?
Yeah, definitely. Let's put together a little resource list at the end and we'll send it out to everyone.
Yeah.
And I also want to just notice that I'm saying Ellen's asking a question. I wonder if you'd be willing to see how that impacted the safety of the call for people. I'm curious. So again, just checking in with the safety of how you're feeling, what's inside with you. How are you holding or not holding, or what's activated or not activated with you in terms of the exchange that Cody and I had, because there was a little charge there. And what can we do to just sort of orient and ground if we're noticing that? But just checking in.
I'm sorry, with who?
There was a question in the chat. Sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
I was just wondering, are you asking that to the group or to me?
To the group, but you're welcome to respond. It's just to the group because that was your question. I was trying to read your question.
Yeah.
How are people doing with that little exercise? Did you notice anything in yourself get activated? And if so, would you be willing to share? And how were you with that? And what was your internal script around, gee, I was activated, but then but I wanted her to shut up, but I liked what she said, but I didn't. But then I didn't know what to do with him because I felt bad for him and I wanted to save him because he was ganged up on, and just whatever it is, just noticing what happened or if there were any sensations or anything inside.
Well, that's the question. I can just speak to it for a moment. Yeah, I just consistent with what we're talking about in this call, I was noticing a lot of just even the examples you were giving, Francesca, and just the given the size of the call. And I know, Francesca, you said, I hope you're willing to play with me. Let me know if you're not, and then proceeded. So there is this that growth edge, right? And checking in with people on, like, Cody, you handled it beautifully, and that's incredible and so very brave. And also you, Francesca, seeing it and naming it. So witnessing that for me was really powerful. And I'm also aware, I'm a trauma-informed therapist, and err on the have those pieces I'm thinking about, but was kind of thinking about for the call, the safety of it, and we're encouraging vulnerability, and then it's, there was a big challenge there, and a container wasn't fully set. I was just curious how people were dealing with that, and I thought it was challenging for me.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And that's why I do smaller group work where there is a smaller container for some of that in terms of the sharing. And I think, Cody, you seemed like you were up for the challenge. Yeah, you pretty much, because I was reading you and with you on that. And again, I appreciate what you're saying, Ellen, because kind of definitely not just picking anyone out and like doing them. I'm not voluntolding, that's not a good thing. But that this is the subtle work. And again, what's my intention behind it? Is it to call out Cody and make sure that he knows he's a terrible person because he's a bad white man who has all this power and privilege? Or is my intention to kind of be part of this embodied conversation where we're kind of leaning into our growing edge, and part of what our safety that needs to be checked is that we are all here on a call together. And that, wait, I'm in a living room with heat and light and with people who are all interested in committing to this path, and we're curious. And I may not feel 100% like safe because it may feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar or a little bit bizarre. And at the same time, can I take a breath there and check? And then can I also know I have boundaries? So when it's not cool, I can just click away, bye, off, I'm done with the call. And that's also part of the process of knowing that this isn't all of what I have to take in just because it's here, right? So clearly the responsibility and the onus is on me to be creating as safe of a container as possible, but that everyone has agency. And that this systemic oppression is like, you have agency, but you don't. You have, but coming into one's agency as people who tend to be in positions of power, who feel as though they're voiceless or powerless, I think is important, because it's the agency denied to people of color, to Black Americans, to BIPOC people, Indigenous folks, that is a lived experience of violence and of death in the streets, that we also, I don't get to have agency when I'm George Floyd, but I do have agency if I say, well, I feel unsafe on a call, and I can click off. And so just noticing that.
Thank you. We are at 8:30, and we have exhausted our 90 minutes. And I think, and I feel that we have accomplished the goal of this Olio. I think we have hopefully satisfied your curiosities, your longings, your desires, as far as plugging into, scratching the surface of mindfulness and psychology as to how it can be used in undoing racism or reducing racism. We are planning to have these Olios every first Sunday of the month going forward. This particular Olio's proceeds are going to Black Lives Matter. There will always be two of us hosting these. Francesca actually sat in for a friend of ours, Robin Schlanger, tonight. She couldn't make it, but Francesca graciously sat in. We don't have any more time for questions, but if you do want to reach out with extra questions, you can reach out to David at Think Olio, and we will send you a resource list of resources where you can do more follow-up work, whether you want to do some work with Francesca, or if you want to do some work with ambient noise and the contact conversation program, you will get all of that information. So with that, Francesca, if you have anything else, we'll turn it over to David.
I just wanted to say thank you all for your embodied presence and for leaning in and getting a little bit uncomfortable. So we're just in this process of, I'm gonna get comfortable with being uncomfortable, or more uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And I put my link in the chat if anybody wants to ask me any other questions another time. Like Darryl just said, David will send out a resource list, but I'm happy to continue this dialogue on email or elsewhere too. So take good care.
All right, Dave.
Thank you so much, Francesca. That was wonderful. Thank you, Darryl. It's wonderful. Yeah, we did record this. I just saw in the chat. The audio is recorded. So if anyone wants that, send me an email. It's in the chat, and I will also share that with you, and we'll get the resources together. And like Darryl said, we're going to continue this monthly because we don't want to just, it's an opportune moment, and there's a lot of momentum, but we don't want to just be reactionary and only be taking part in these kinds of things when there's a huge event that goes on. So let's keep at this together, and I really appreciate everyone showing up tonight. Thank you all so much. Again, over $1,000 raised for Black Lives Matter. So it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you all for taking part in that.
All right, Jonathan, Cody, Emily, Cher, Annie, who else did I miss of my crew? Jennifer. All right, guys, thank you so much for showing up.
Lovely seeing you.
Lovely seeing you too. And you guys will get the email with the links. All right.
All right, everyone. Take
Take
care.
good care, everyone. Be well. Be kind.